Hello, everybody, and welcome to my latest conversation for Beyond the Curtain. Today, I'm speaking to Jamie Chapman, who has starred in Nativity on stage, Nativity Rocks on screen, as well as stage appearances in Mousetrap and various shows, as well as screen roles as extras, Red Dwarf, The Crown, and many more. I hope you enjoy this chat. How did you get into acting in the first place?
Oh gosh, now what I started really, my very first performance was in the Nativity play, would you believe? And I was cast as Joseph naturally, although I think I'd have been far better as Herod. I'm better at character parts than was even then.
Yeah.
But apparently what I'd done when I was about, I must have been 5 years old, I'd worked out that the audience were looking at the baby Jesus and Mary was holding the baby Jesus. And so I worked out that I had to get hold of the baby Jesus if I were to share some of the limelight. So I was a very paternal Joseph, a very hands-on father in that nativity, but something had clicked and I made a beeline for that baby and wouldn't give it back.
And what was it that kind of made you want to do acting in the first place?
Well, Mum, I said this in an interview the other day, Mum is really the grande dame of the local operatic society. And so I was taken down to the Weymouth Operatic to be in a production of The King and I as one of the royal children. And it was February 1983 at the Weymouth Pavilion. And I can remember we all had to come on, da, 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 dum, bum, ba, but you know the bit in King and I.
Yeah.
And you had to bow to the king, you had to kiss Mrs. Anna's hand, and then you had to back away. But I was given a little bit of extra business to do with a sticky sweet, whereby I'd have to take it out of my mouth and very slowly put it behind my back. And I worked out on the opening night, about 1,000 people out front. It's a big theatre because of the summer seasons at the seaside in Weymouth. And I worked out that if I took this out slowly and I looked at the king, and then I looked away, and then I looked out front, that I would get the most enormous laugh. And I don't know why I knew that. I just worked it out, age 7, at the Weymouth PAV, and there was this huge laugh. I still remember that feeling. It's a wonderful feeling. I always think communal laughter is such a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
It's the thing I miss most in this pandemic, is everyone, the whole auditorium, a rolling laugh. It's a life-affirming sound. I miss it.
Yes, I'd agree. It's like when you've watched like streams, and it's not the same as it when you can. It's like canned laughter.
Not so. I mean, people have done some amazing work. Don't let's be wrong about it. But there's nothing beats being in the room where it happens. To quote another very famous musical.
Indeed. So from obviously childhood, when it kind of obviously went to college and everything, was obviously theatre the road you were pursuing, acting.
Yeah, I did. I always absolutely had my eye on that ever since The King and I. There was a local group called, instead of the Weymouth Operatic Society, which are the adults, they set up after a production of Oliver, the Weymouth Operatic Workshop, and we were wow. And although I say it as shouldn't, I was a bit of a leading light of wow. My Bugsy Malone was much admired. And so I went right the way through doing that. And then I decided, because I was fairly academic, that I'd go to university, but I would do an academic degree. So I didn't want to ever study drama academically, really. And I did politics at Exeter University. And while I was there, I also trained to be a speech and drama teacher externally with Lambda. And I got my licentiate while I was at Exeter. And then after that, and only after that, I went off to the Bristol Old Vic, and I won a scholarship there for their 2-year course. And so that's sort of how it went from a very paternalistic Joseph in the Nativity to graduating from the Old Vic 20 years later.
And kind of what were the shows you kind of were doing when you were at college? What kind of ones you remember?
Gosh, that's a good one. Let me think back. So my big grad part was, we did Pride and Prejudice, and I played Mr. Collins, you know, the horrible vicar, the social climbing vicar, who's also a bit of a perv. And so I remember we decided he would sweat a lot. Yeah. And so I used to dab glycerin all on here, and I put in my hair oil throughout it, so it was sort of lank and limp. And I just imagine he'd have wet palms, and he was trying to chat up Elizabeth. And I loved playing that. So I did that actually at the Old Vic itself, which is the most beautiful theatre you can imagine. I think opened in 1764. Absolutely gorgeous. And then, what else did we do? We did Pericles. No one does Pericles. And the director had hit on the idea of doing it as a Western. Can you believe it? As a Western. And so I was playing Simonides, who is, oh, I can't remember whose father it was now. It was a long time ago. But anyway, he decided, because I read it and thought, oh, nice little character part. And he decided he wanted it played as a Mexican on his ranchero. And so I thought, okay, I'll have a go, because it was a Western. And I said, well, do you want it in a Mexican accent? And I remember him saying, I don't know. I thought, oh, you'll have to let me know if you want Shakespeare blank verse done in a Mexican accent. I need to get working on that. Yes. But eventually I saw the costume and I thought, you'll have to do it in a Mexican accent. So I was at the door. It was all of that stuff. So you can imagine. But anyway, that was my Simonides. And the other thing I did there, we did Our Town, and I did the professor in that. And I played Captain Hook as well in the Christmas show. And, oh, the other thing I did, I played the wet nurse in Chaste Maid in Cheapside with enormous boobs. It went down very, very well with the good people of Bristol. So if anyone's looking for a wet nurse, then I can say I've got experience.
There you go. What was kind of then the first role you did out of college?
So out of college, I'd worked while at college on a radio project with a lady called Sue Wilson. Brilliant director. She went on actually to become principal at the Bristol Old Vic, but she was doing a production of Breaking the Code, beautiful play, at the Chester Gateway, and she called me in to audition for the part of Christopher. So playing Christopher Morecambe in Breaking the Code in January, February 2002 at the Chester Gateway Theatre was my debut, as it were.
I'm just going to skip the theatre a little bit to go on to some of the TV credits you've obviously done. Obviously, Extras, probably one of the big ones, working with some of the biggest stars in the world, I suppose. What was that like?
It was wonderful. It really was. I mean, what a great gig to get. And I'd not done a lot of TV up to that point, really. I'd done little bits and bobs, but nothing big. So to become a regular in that was really quite something. And the reason that, because normally you have to do a lot of other stuff before you get given a regular role. And I think the reason I was able to get that so soon was because if you think about Extras, the whole point is it's a spoof of celebrity, really. And there are all these celebs coming in. And he'd written the sitcom within the sitcoms, which is what I was in When the Whistle Blows as Brains. I was the first person to whom he ever said, are you having a laugh to? Mm. And of course, the thing is, for the celeb jokes to work, the other actors in the sitcom with him couldn't really be recognizable faces. It sort of wouldn't work if you then thought, well, you're a celebrity yourself. So we really had to be unknowns and not familiar faces from the telly. And so Tracy Gillam, who's an amazing casting director, and Nicky Bly was working on that too, called me in. And I remember doing the initial audition where they record you, read it a couple of times. And I did it in the northern posh, that poshed up northern, thought, well, I'll try a bit of that for this character. And I recorded it. And then I went off. It's so rare for me to go on holiday. I never go on holiday. And I went off on holiday and I was in the middle of rural France a couple of weeks later. And I got a call from my then agent who said, you need to come back. And I said, I can't. I'm in the middle of rural France. And then she said, oh, all right, I'll tell them you can't come back. And I remember putting down the phone and thinking, oh my God, I think I might have just passed up on the biggest opportunity of my life. And about 10 minutes later, she rang back and said, they'll see you when you get back. And I thought, oh, okay. And I remember I flew back into Southampton and I raced up on the train and stayed overnight with my godfather in Twickenham and then went in the next day. And it was extraordinary because you meet him, Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant, and they couldn't have been nicer and read it again. And I remember thinking it was so positive. I thought, have I been offered this? And you think, I almost daren't believe it. And I went back home. And I can remember the moment I got the call, actually, because the call came through on the phone. And on the radio, just in the kitchen, was the Beatles, Here Comes the Sun. Da, 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 da. And that was what was playing when I got the news that I'd been cast as a regular in that. So now whenever I get a good job, that's my getting a good job song. I immediately play Here Comes the Sun. Da, da, da. That's what I love that one. I'd have that one on a desert island.
Okay. So obviously you've done all this TV work like The Crown, Red Dwarf. Kind of what would be your kind of one TV role highlight?
Oh gosh, I mean, other than extras, it's so hard. I mean, The Crown is extraordinary. We actually filmed that because it was supposed to be a great big riot in the miners' strike. We actually filmed it outside a factory in Slough on the coldest day of the year. It was huge fun. It was freezing. Yeah. What you didn't see was because we had to do so many takes because there's so much going on, and to get it right and in the frame at the right moment. I can remember they kept wrapping us in blankets and hot water bottles. So that's the bit you don't see. But I mean, wonderful to be in such an extraordinary series. Red Dwarf was amazing to play that character, Ziggy Bryceman. And it was in a ship where criticism had been banned, and therefore everything was wildly exaggerated, most of all me. And that was just huge fun. And also, remember, that was my favorite show when I was at uni in the 90s. I mean, that was the one we used to pour into the well, I'm dating myself now, into the TV room. We used to pour into there to watch it. And then there you are, sat with them, with Crichton and Cat, and this is extraordinary. So yeah, it was an amazing experience doing that. And I also had an absolute ball working on Nativity Rocks as Craig Revel Hallward's germophobic henchman. I loved it. We had such a giggle. So that was a very happy time too.
Of course, and as soon as the right time to move on to obviously the role some people may know you best for, obviously Patrick Burns in Nativity. Kind of obviously you've played it for the entire run since it opened in 2018, was it?
17.
17. Oh, I can't remember. But yeah, obviously, how's that kind of that role been for you? Obviously.
Well, I love him. I love Patrick Burns in all his bitter majesty. I think he's such a fun character to play. So I was so thrilled. And obviously, the way Debbie works is very, very different. It's through improvisation, and you can bring, the characters, the film had already happened. So the character was sort of established. But nevertheless, in Debbie's work, you can bring what you want to it and she'll shape it, but you can bring stuff. It's hugely collaborative and you have enormous freedom there. And so, I love playing him. I love it. So we developed all sorts of things with it. So this is how the costume can sometimes add to it. We decided that he was bigger than he'd used to be. Yeah. He'd put on some weight, but he would never admit it. And so all the clothes are a size or 2 sizes too small, including this hideous snakeskin jacket that always sort of buttons up with the sort of belly underneath it poking out. And no, I love it. If you were still allowed to smoke in plays, he would have a fag on the go with nicotine stains. Of course, you're not allowed to do that now. But that's my image of him, sort of living in some bedsit, creating horrible little phrases with which to torture the people. I mean, he's the sort of person who, as a child, used to tear the wings off flies, you imagine. That would be Patrick Burns. So, but I love it in all his bitter glory. He's huge fun to play, which is why I keep going and playing him again and again.
I'm slightly biased, but you do it tremendously. So.
Oh, thank you.
Obviously, as you say, working with Debbie and kind of improvising, how is it kind of creating well, as you say, the film was out before it, but creating a new role, kind of improvised in a new musical? Kind of...
Well, here's the thing. What you do is, I always say, if you want a better exit line in the Debbie Isaac one, think of one. Yeah. She might say not that, think of something else, but have a go. And also, what it is with that, what was so exciting working on it, and particularly the way Debbie works, is that if you were bringing something to rehearsal, she'd then run with it. Yeah. So I can remember as part of an improvisation, we happened to one day in the workshop, this was before we did the show proper, we did a 2-week workshop at the Birmingham Rep. And I remember Debbie just saying, right, let's just make a tour bus with some chairs. And you be the tour guide, and I just want you to talk about going through Hollywood. And of course, part of that's like, but then you just think, actually just have fun with it. And it became the opening of Act 2. Yeah. I mean, how wonderful to get the chance to do that. Something whereby Debbie obviously had a thought. Just go try that, and then you begin to work out and think, oh, I'm going to try this time next time we do it, and try that line. And you can create it. And what it is that it almost becomes created around you. Yeah. So the receptionist, who was always sort of a bit of a jobsworth, became something else. Yeah. With this huge blonde quiff, and it's fascinating working in that way. It almost grows rather than is created. I love it. I love working in that way.
And of course, one of the highlights of the show is obviously the Christmas tree moment. What do you think your kind of 7-year-old self, as Joseph would say, kind of seeing you up kind of where you've got
I
to
think
now?
that Christmas tree is my 7-year-old self. I mean, that Christmas tree would have done exactly what I did if he played Joseph, without question. Yeah. And it takes some skill, without wishing to blow my own trumpet, to manage to tap dance in that outfit. If ever I need to play Mrs. Anna in The King and I, I've already worked out how to manage with that crinoline. Mind you, that said, I went flying in the last week in London at the last the last run of Nativity. Over. It was like timber. Yeah. I was trying to get off quite quickly, so I was probably showing off, trying to think I'll do a sort of running exit. Big mistake, never to be repeated. So I had a bit of a pronounced limp thereafter. So it was like hair flick. It was crossed with Patrick Burns, the way I was walking for the rest of that run.
Obviously, in the show, you obviously work with different groups of children. What's that kind of experience like?
Oh, they're amazing. Because the thing is, you've got to remember, they can't be sort of like just Italia Conti kids in Nativity, because it just wouldn't work. They have to be very, very authentic, very, very real, and have to not really be show kids for it to work, I think. So, but it's still fascinating. You'll work with them, and there's something, I said it before in an interview, I think, with you, that there's something very satisfying about watching a 9-year-old start nailing their laughs. Yeah. When they do, you think, you've got the instinct, haven't you? You know what to do. You know exactly what to do. And that's wonderful. And also the stuff they come up with, because they're so free. We can learn something from those kids. They don't think too much about it. They just do it. And that's that they live in that moment. And that's why they're such good value.
I guess it must be kind of keeps you all on your toes as the adult cast, obviously, because kids can, obviously, who knows what they're going to say.
Without question. I mean, that's another thing about the way Debbie works. I mean, for instance, in the film, you don't know the story. You don't know what's going to happen, really. You turn up and you're told briefly what happens in that scene and you do it. Now, what it means is you have to listen, because there aren't just, I'm waiting to say my line. You have to listen to respond. And of course, that's really what good acting is. So it's why she gets really quite naturalistic performances, the way she works. It's clever.
Yeah, cool. Obviously, as you've already mentioned, obviously playing Tony in the Nativity Rocks. Kind of, how was the experience? Obviously, you just said, but was it much different experience doing it to the camera to then obviously the stage kind of improvising?
Yeah, I mean, I always say the only difference between in performing in the theatre and performing on camera is just projection. It's the same. Acting is the same. But whereas on stage, you're trying to project and the people are a long way away. If you're in close-up in the cinema, well, I mean, you're projecting to the end of your nose, but it's the same thing. Yeah. No, we had an absolute ball. I loved it. I really did. I really did. They're just slightly different disciplines, but they, as I say, it's the same thing. Acting is the same. It's just a matter of projection.
Cool. And obviously, I was looking, going through your theatre roles, and obviously one that stood out was the Mousetrap, because obviously it's such an iconic kind of show. Obviously, nobody knows. I still can't believe it's been on how many 65 years, and the secret's not really out there. Kind of
well, we always say at the end of the show, there's a little speech that says, "Please keep the secret." But it's, oh, I loved it. Yeah, I had the most wonderful year doing that at the St. Martin's. And well, I also made my best friend in the world, Helen Kirkpatrick, who was playing Miss Casewell. I was Christopher Wren. And that was gorgeous. I always say I spent the entire year either on stage or in Helen Kirkpatrick's dressing room. So we had the most wonderful time there. I mean, the play as it is a, I mean, Agatha Christie is wonderful at plot, but sometimes you learn a lot from making some of those scenes work, because it's almost a museum piece. It's charming, it's brilliant if it's done in the right way, but it's almost a museum piece. I mean, for instance, I'm not giving anything away when I say at the start of Act 2, there's been a murder, and we're all there, and a murder in that very room, in fact. And 10 minutes into Act 2, the way he gets the hostess, the lead lady, Molly, off stage, the way Agatha Christie gets her off stage is with the immortal line, "Well, I must see to the vegetables." You think, well, wow. I mean, that's what I call true British phlegm. There's been a murder on this very carpet not 10 minutes since, but we mustn't let the vegetables spoil. There you go. They'd have got through the COVID crisis, wouldn't they? No question about
Always. They certainly would have. Obviously, what would be kind of your highlight theatre-wise for your career? Is it Patrick, or is it kind of...
Oh, well, I loved Nativity, of course. But there have been a few things I loved. Nativity, I loved the Mousetrap. I absolutely adored playing, directed by Richard Barron, fabulous director. I loved playing A Chip in the Sugar, one of the Alan Bennett's talking heads, when it's, 45 minutes, just you. I loved playing that. I also loved doing Neville's Island as well at the Stephen Joseph Theatre, Alan Ayckbourn's theatre up in Scarborough. I absolutely loved playing that as well. That was quite deep. I love playing anything by Ayckbourn as well. Oh, so many things. I loved years ago, as I said, Mr. Collins back then. It's almost so many of them as they go past. What else have I really enjoyed? I did a brilliant new play called Feel Good back in the day, back in the Nottingham Playhouse. That was a brilliant new farce all about politics and current. That was wonderful too. Wonderful.
And obviously, I didn't know this till the other day, but you're principal coach at the London Speech Workshop. What kind of does that entail?
Well, here we work on two main things at the London Speech Workshop. So we do accent softening for someone who might want to soften an accent. Often that will be foreign professionals, but not always. And then it's just about helping them feel really confident with their speech and helping with clarity if it's needed. And then also effective communication, which is when people feel that they might have to present at work or in meetings and they don't always feel as confident as they could. Well, what we do then is we give them techniques that really work to help with that. And I've been so lucky really in the way that being principal coach at the London Speech Workshop is dovetailed with my acting, because I always say it's such an important thing to anyone who listens to this who's thinking of a career in the theatre and TV, is have another career that you can run alongside. Because where I think it goes bad, this profession, is if you are ever in a position whereby getting an acting job feels like it enables you to escape from your life. That's a bad thing. You have to enjoy your life, and I endeavour to enjoy mine as much as I possibly can.
Yeah, and obviously, I guess that role's kind of helped you keep a bit busier in lockdown rather than...
Oh God, yeah, and you see terrible things online from actors who've been left almost without support, selling possessions to try and pay the rent. So I'm a very lucky boy that hasn't been a problem in any way. So that's very fortunate, and I'm very grateful for that.
Obviously, switch it to the other experience you've had in lockdown is obviously read that lyric, which obviously kind of, where did that kind of idea come from?
Well, I hated lockdown. I think everyone does, don't they? And I still do. It's ghastly, but you've got to make the best of it. And I remember people were doing all sorts of things, interesting things, little sketches, little monologues they'd written. And I thought, what shall I do? What shall I do? And I stumbled across somebody reading poetry on it, but it was a bit po-faced. And it was using what we always used to call at drama school, the poetry voice. Do you know what I mean? It's a little bit in that poetry voice where it's very serious and highbrow. And so I thought, I want to do a spoof of that. And I thought, what shall I do? And I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll take the lyrics of pop songs, but I'll deliver them in that style. And so I started with the Venga Boys. And I just thought, boom, 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 boom. I want you in my room to spend the night together from now until forever, boom, boom, and all night. Yeah. Anyway, I thought it was going to be a one-off just to amuse my chums on Twitter, because we were all feeling a bit down because the theatres had closed. But it sort of really took off. Yeah. And so I started doing them every night and taking requests. And then it got picked up by the BBC, and I started doing them on local radio. And it was extraordinary. I'm now on edition number 117. I must do some more. I did promise I would do some more for Easter, and I never got round to it. But 117 is not bad.
It's not bad, no, considering. And obviously you did the Gay Days as well. Was that filmed in lockdown?
It was Short? All on each other's, Debbie Short, the little sitcom pilot, and it was all filmed on our cameras, and so that on our phones, rather, on our cameras, on our phones. But so that was literally called lockdown art, really, because we just simply couldn't meet each other. But the way that David O'Reilly's an amazing writer, and the way Debbie and Nikki also edited it was brilliant. And it was so good. And how wonderful to get to do a scene, albeit remotely, with the fabulous Sherry Hughes. That was wonderful too.
Well, I'm going to move on to my second section of the interview, which I've called quickfire questions. So
quickfire questions. Okay.
These are more just general questions about your life more than anything else. First one would be, what's your favourite food?
What's my favourite food? Would generally tend to be Italian food. I love that, and I really miss going to Italian restaurants, but nothing, and I mean nothing, will ever replace in my affections Monster Munch. Now, I'm on a Monster Munch break at the moment because I'm losing a bit of weight, but by heck, I miss it. Oh, I love Monster Munch. My absolute favourite.
What's your favourite flavour? That's the big question then.
Well, I like both, but I do like the beef one. I like the beef one. The pickled onion one can sometimes take the roof of your mouth off a bit. I don't mind that, but the beef one is just nice, lovely.
If you could be any animal, what would it be and why?
I think I would be a very treasured domestic cat. We had a domestic cat called Sally, who was 3/4 Persian, 1/4 rough, and she was feral, Frank. She was the most miserable cat ever. So Sally would come into the sitting room. You'd be sat down doing nothing, just watching the telly. She would come in. She would literally do a circuit of the coffee table. And then at the door, leaving again, having got your attention, she would turn round and for no reason, she'd just go and leave. And you think, you wretch, we pay your vet's bills, we feed you, and you do nothing but be nasty to us. I mean, the last thing we ever saw her do before she had to be put down, unfortunately, because she was very old and very ill. Thank you for all those years of tender love and care. But I would be a nice domestic cat. So I would be the cat we always wanted. That's what I would be.
Yes. Who would play you in a film of your life if you could pick someone to play you?
Ideally me, I think. But who would play me in a... Oh, that's a jolly good question. Who would play me? I'll have to get back to you on that, but it'll have to be somebody fairly quirky, and they'll have to give him a wig. So because you won't find my hair on anyone else. I apologise for wearing a beanie. I look like I'm auditioning for a boy band, but not successfully, I might hasten to add. But my hair is now enormous. I haven't had it cut since the 4th of December, and my hair does not grow down. It grows up and out. Yeah. So I'm now having to cover it.
Not long till, is it Monday we can have a haircut?
Monday we can. I'm booked in fairly shortly after.
Yes, me too. Where's the favourite place you visited in the world?
Favourite place anywhere in the entire world?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not very well travelled. You know, the last time I went on holiday was 15 years ago. 15 years. It's because I have two jobs, you see. And when you're doing one, you're not doing the other. And therefore, you have to rush straight back to the other job. So 15 years ago. But I loved Austria. I have very happy memories of a holiday in Austria. And going up a mountain, this is absolutely true. Not a huge one, but going up a mountain on the ski lift, on the chairlift. But then I couldn't face getting on the chairlift to go down because, it was just scary. I mean, you had a very short amount of time and then you literally went off a ledge. So we had to walk down. I wasn't very popular with my companion. And as we had to walk back down the mountain, but it was very nice. It was a nice day. I loved it. Beautiful.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm the heights of Abraham.
I'm not. I mean, I'm normally okay, but that was a bit much. That was a leap of faith that I was not willing to take.
Yes, I remember being traumatized by the needles in Isle of Wight. Kind of, you come over.
Oh yeah.
And soon to go over the cliff, and I was like, oh no.
Yeah, I can remember doing at the Nottingham Playhouse. I did a production of The Hound of the Baskervilles, and I suddenly realised during the tech, because you're just getting on with it, I thought, I'm very high up here on this piece of set, with no, you think health and safety would have a field day. Yeah, it is. It's not. I'm not thrilled about it. I'm all right, but I want to hold on to something.
Yes. What would be your favourite film?
My favourite film would be, now, do you know, this is a funny old one. It would be Apollo 13. Now, I tell you why it is. Because I did not want to see it when it came out and friends wanted to take me to see it. I said, not any interest in space travel or anything to do with it. And I was really quite sniffy about it. And then I went to see it and I thought it was the most amazing human drama. So it was sort of a lesson to myself, never to assume. And there's this wonderful moment where the actress who's playing, I think it's Jim Lovell, isn't it, the astronaut, the actress playing his wife Marilyn is brilliant, and she has this moment where she's telling the journalist to clear off their front lawn because they're literally there waiting for him to die up in space. And for her reaction, she tells them to clear off, and she does this amazing piece of acting where she has the line where she has to say, if you have a problem with that, take it up with my husband. He will be home on Friday. Of course, he's stuck up in space. And she does it, and her voice breaks on the word home. And it was an amazing acting lesson, because she didn't just literally break down and sob, and she just had this, he will be home on Friday, this one moment where you saw what she was holding inside. Wonderful acting. So yes, that one.
You've already mentioned the Beatles song earlier, but what would be your favourite album?
Oh gosh, do you know, I'm hopeless in terms of albums. I never listen to like an album. I'm utterly eclectic in the way that I listen. So I might listen to a bit of classical. I might listen to some cheesy pop. I might decide to listen to the Beatles. I wouldn't know what album it's from, but I know what I like. My only the music is this, about whether or not I like it. Can I hum the tune? If I can't hum the tune, then it's not for me.
Yeah.
So no matter how clever it is, like Benjamin Britten, I think, but I can't hum the tune. I'm sure it's very clever. I can't hum this tune. No, like recitative, not bothered, but nice tune, then I'll go with it. Then it can be whatever it likes.
Another favourite one. Favourite book?
Oh, favourite book. Okay, my favourite book would be, this is an unusual one, this, The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame. Now, I was bought this age 7 by my grandma, who I loved very dearly. And I'd already been keen on reading, but this amazing book with these wonderful characters, and it had quite challenging words in it. You know, the vocabulary in it is quite advanced. But I wanted to know, I wanted to understand these words and to read this for myself, because I got my nan to read it to me again and again. And my reading age shot up because I just wanted to read this book. And all of a sudden, reading and words became like a secret that I had to know. I had to know the answer to. Like every word, if I don't know what a word means, I feel fuming. It's like I've not been let into the secret. Tell me the secret. What does it mean? And I was like that as a kid. So that book, it started a lifelong love of words and literature and the power of words.
What was the last TV series you've binged?
Do you know, this will surprise you as well. I simply love watching classic Coronation Street. I love Coronation Street anyway. The classic Coronation Street, you can get them on YouTube. And oh, I love it. The characters then, I mean, they used to be written by people like Jack Rosenthal, and the writing is amazing. And the characters, Hilda Ogden, Ina Sharples, Elsie Tanner, Annie Walker, amazing characters, Stan Ogden, Eddie Yates, they're great. Love it. Bette Lynch, love it. That. And so I watched about 3 of those back to back last night. And I had my cup of tea before bed. Very nice it was too.
And what would be your favourite theatre, either you've been to or performed in?
Well, I love the St Martin's. It's the most beautiful theatre. It's about 550 seater in it, all in wood, and it's just, and the acoustics amazing, but that's a lovely theatre. And I always say I love the Stephen Joseph, which is the one in Scarborough. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's in the Round. So, and I was a bit worried about doing in the Round, but then I did it and I loved it. I remember just thinking, well, wow, everyone was so close. It was storytelling. It says nowhere to hide because they're behind you, they're at the sides of you, but I found it fascinating. So I really loved that. I became an absolute convert to that. I loved it. And then I also loved the Birmingham Rep. So really happy memories of opening Nativity there. It's a beautiful theatre.
If you could have dinner with 3 guests, alive or dead, who are you inviting?
Okay, well, it's hard, this one. So I would have my nan, and my nan, because I want to catch up, I want to find out, and I really want her just to myself.
Yeah.
But putting that to one side, because that will always be the answer. So imagine I've already had my dinner with now. Who would I like to have a chat to? 3 guests, alive or dead, would be, I said this the other day, I'd love to meet William Shakespeare. I have to know. I really hope, given the hygiene standards of the time, that we'll have to put him in a pomander and put him by we'll have to use the air freshener if need be, but I still want to know, I want to talk to the man who created those extraordinary phrases and plays. I also would like to have my friend Helen, because Helen Kirkpatrick, who I told you about, who always, I say about Helen, she's the sort of person you could lay on an open wound and it would heal. She makes a good situation that bit more fun and a bad situation that bit more bearable just by being there. So I would want her there with William Shakespeare. And the other one I just must, because he'd be a hoot, would be Noel Coward. I would love to have a chat with Noel Coward. I think if I had, me and Helen were there with Shakespeare and Coward, we'd have the most wonderful evening.
Glorious. And my final question then, to wrap up, would be, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
The best piece of advice I've ever been, do you know, I know what it is. It's my nan again. It's whenever I was feeling a bit low, was making a fuss, she would just say to me, she would fix me with her eyes, because she knew me very well, and she'd just say, Jamie, dear, it is not the trenches. And you know, I say this to myself time and again, especially during lockdown. Because, you know, if you're on your own in lockdown, it's pretty tough. And, it, you know, getting on for 13, 14 months now. But every now and again, if you think, oh, I feel really down on myself and fed up, you just get, now come along, and it's not the trenches, dear. Yeah. And it's somehow because of that phrase and because of who said it, that it wasn't just pull yourself together. It was said with great care and love that always cheers me. So funnily enough, it's a form of pull your socks up, but it's not the trenches, because it always makes me smile as well. That's what she used to say to me, quite right too.
Brilliant, that perfectly wraps this up. So thank you for joining me today. It's been lovely to chat to you, and hopefully not too long till we're
such a pleasure.
Back watching you.
Thank you
on the stage.
Well, it's been a delight to chat to you, and brilliant questions too. I loved it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you all.